What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. I want to thank everybody for the continuous support of the channel, all the donations I've received, subscriptions, likes, any way you guys support the channel. I appreciate it. So it's been announced today that Devin Haney and Teofimo Lopez is officially set, signed, and ready to go for August 16th out in Saudi Arabia. This is going to be a catch weight at 145 pounds at welterweight. I don't really know why the catch weight is there. I mean, both of these guys just like recently moved up together from 140. So I don't think the catch weight is really necessary. You know, if you guys are going to be at welterweight, and if you guys are entertaining, matches with like Jorge Ennis and other welterweight champs, why are you guys continuing to fight at catch weights when you both just moved up together? You know what I mean? I just don't understand why that's happening. I don't know if that even plays an advantage for either fighter, because both guys are career lightweights that moved up to 140 and now at 147. You guys might as well just fight at the weight. You know what I mean? And I hope that if they are to get a title shot in a future fight, I hope there's no any kind of catch weight implemented in that future fight. Whether they fight Brian Norman or a Jorge Ennis or whoever. Hopefully they can just fight at the true 147-pound weight limit. If they are gonna fight someone other than themselves, and I'm speaking towards Rolly, Ryan Garcia, any of these, stars from 135. Even if Tank is to eventually take a fight against a Manny Pacquiao, let's cut the catch weights out because you guys are at 147 and you're fighting guys that just moved up. But even if you are going to fight a true 147 champion, just fight at the true weight. You know what I mean? So I just wanted to start by saying that. Now, this is a fight that I wanted a really long time ago. I wanted these guys to fight each other when they were back down at 135. I know Devin Haney was going to their fights, and I'm talking about Teofimo, I'm talking about Ryan Garcia. I know that he was doing a lot of face-offs with them and calling them out after their fights and stuff like that, and after his fights. So I know he really wanted to fight for a long time, and I wanted to see the fight for a long time, especially between those three. Um, but they all took different paths. Teofimo, one he was unified. I think he was making the most traction early when he became unified, and then when he beat Lomachenko, and was holding all four titles, even though he wasn't officially undisputed. Because Devin Haney had like one of the titles with the WBC. I made videos on that back then, but then he lost to George Kambosos, and he eventually moved up to 140 and was able to beat Josh Taylor at the time, who was the former, undisputed champ. And then at that point, Devin Haney became undisputed at 135 officially, and then he moved up. Um, but I like the fact that this fight is happening. Um, I, we all know that they recently fought on the Times Square card. Uh, Teofimo Lopez had for Arnold Barbosa, who was coming off two of his best career wins. And Devin Haney was fighting Jose Ramirez, who seemed like a fighter that was, he's past his prime, but at least he wasn't fighting at 140 this time. But it was more of a tune-up for Devin Haney because we saw what happened in the Ryan Garcia fight, right? He took a lot of damage in that fight, and even though they overturned the outcome of that loss to Ryan Garcia to a no contest, we still know what happened in the ring that night, right? He took a beating in that night, getting dropped multiple times, several times in the fight, and he got busted up there, and he took a year off. So now that this fight is happening, I did a quick look at the highlights of the fight with Jose Ramirez, right? Devin Haney, Jose Ramirez, recent fight. And obviously, it was one of the most boring fights we've seen. I know it's the most boring Devin Haney fight that we've ever seen. Um, and I question whether or not I'm like, I hope that fight with Ryan Garcia I know he's going to be more defensive, and I don't blame him for being more defensive. But with all the criticism with Devin Haney fight, Devin Haney got over the years for being boring. I never really thought he was boring. I just never thought he was like a huge puncher. But he was always willing to let his hands go. You know what I mean? He's not like a runner or anything like that. But in that fight there, it was one of the fewest punches thrown in any fight in recent years. And even though I did not enjoy that fight, um, I think Tio is gonna have a really hard time beating that version of Devin Haney that we saw in that last fight because of the movement, and because he was definitely prepared for the left hook. Even there was points in that fight where Arnold Barboza would, in some of the very few exchanges that we got in that fight, you can tell that Devin Haney was prepared for that left hook. And I know Jose Ramirez is not as talented as Ryan Garcia, in my opinion, or even Teofimo Lopez. You can tell that Devin Haney was being really, really defensively responsible in that fight. And you can tell that he worked on some things, and Teal's going to have a hard time against Devin Haney based on how I seen Devin Haney fight in that last fight. I think if this was the Devin Haney that we seen fight against Lomachenko or some of the other opponents in the past where he opened up a lot more through more combinations, I think Tio would have a better chance because he can try to throw with him or throw in between the punches and counter Haney and possibly hurt him because Tio has pop. Now, Tio hasn't been the knockout artist that he was in his earlier days before he fought Lomachenko, right? But he can definitely still punch. I just don't think he's a monster puncher like he seemed like he was in his earlier fights. But Tio is going to have a hard time against Devin Haney because I believe that Teofimo Lopez does his best work when the fight is in the center of the ring or when he's fighting on the back foot, you know, when he's looking to counter, you know what I mean? He's looking to time his opponent and set traps and counter. I think that's when Tio does his best work. But when Tio is coming forward and he's flat-footed and, he's trying to be the initiator, I think that's when Tio doesn't look as good, for most of his fights. And when you look at the Jermaine Ortiz fight, Jermaine Ortiz, when you look at the Sandor Martin fight, when you look at certain fights where he's just kind of coming straight forward, flat-footed, I think that's when he's easier to hit. I think that's when he's, just defensively not as good. I don't think that's his best game. And I think he's going to have a hard time with Haney because Haney does have a very good jab. I tuned into a little bit of the Jermaine Ortiz fight just right before I made this video because I know that was a fight where a lot of people felt like Tio didn't win, but a lot of people wanted Jermaine to lose it just because of the way he was fighting. But when I was watching a little bit of it, I was like, okay, I could see Devin Haney doing this, fighting like this, but doing it better than Jermaine Ortiz because I do think Haney's better than Jermaine Ortiz. And I can see where Tio can struggle in that kind of fight. You know what I'm saying? And this is why I think that Ortiz, not for nothing, Haney, I'm sorry, not Haney, Ortiz, not neither one of them, Teofimo. This is why I feel like he really didn't want to make this fight. This is why he called out Turk Al-Sheikh because we already know what he did. He went on Twitter, he took to Twitter, called Turk Al-Sheikh a dictator, all right, with DICK, and then removed it, and then eventually went on to apologize publicly about that. And this is because Turkey wanted to make the fight between him and Devin Haney instead of making a fight between Teofimo and Jaron Ennis. Jaron Ennis is the more dangerous opponent, in my opinion. and would beat Teofimo, possibly stop Teofimo. But I could see why Teofimo would prefer that fight because he wouldn't have to like be the initiator. You know what I mean? He wouldn't have to just walk forward and chase a guy like Javon Ennis as opposed to a guy like Devin Haney, you know, depending on how Devin Haney fights. If Devin Haney fights, you know, like he has in some of his previous fights, I can see Teofimo having a better shot in that fight. I'm trying to think. I'm talking to you guys, and I'm trying to think of Jorge Lonares. That was the other name that was in my head all this time, you know. And I say Jorge because Jorge, you know, even though he was older at that time, he's still a big puncher at 135. He still had fast hands. He was still a good combination, but he was a deadly puncher at 135. And I think that's the best comparison because even though Haney was younger, fresher, quicker, you know, and was beating him to the punch, we saw what happened when, you know, when Jorge Linares was able to land clean against Haney. He landed a big shot. It was a short right hand counter, I think, something that I've said in my breakdown to watch out for because that was his best punch. Haney got caught with it and got rocked and, you know, could barely walk back to his corner. It actually was hurt for the remainder of the fight and had to hold on. And that is the version of Haney that I think Teofimo would have a better chance of beating. The version of Haney we saw in his last fight, even though everybody hated that fight, that is the version of Haney that I think Teo is going to struggle the most with. All right. This is not a prediction video, y'all. This is just my first thoughts of how I can see it playing out based on what we've seen recently. And I know Teofimo on that night in Times Square, he was the most impressive out of everybody. You know, some may say Rolly because he won against Ryan. But I thought Teofimo from round 1 to round 12 or whatever, I thought he was the most impressive of the night, especially because Arnold was coming off of 2 really, really good wins. I just think that version of Teo, yes, he looked good against an Arnold that was there to get outboxed that night. You know what I mean? And I don't think that is gonna be Haney. You know what I mean? I don't think Teo can beat him the same exact way. Haney's quicker, has a better jab, got good movement, better reflexes, just better defense. He's a better fighter than Arnold Barbosa. You know. So I'm looking forward to the fight, but I'm not expecting it to be an action-packed fight, you know, and I know this is probably going to end up being like a pay-per-view and all of that. But I'm not expecting an action-packed fight, you know, and you guys can say what you want in the comments. I know people are going to crush Haney because they do in every video that I do, or any video of any content that I see with Devin Haney, period. But at the end of the day, Haney is going to be difficult for Teofimo Lopez that night. And I don't think the Haneys really care about what the fans say about anything. I don't think they care. I think they're trying to get the W. I hope he initiate and let his hands go a little bit more though, compared to what we've seen in the last fight. But I'm not expecting them to because Teo is a lot more dangerous than Jose Ramirez at this stage in his career. All right, but that's my first thoughts. Let me know what you guys think. I'm gonna probably be dropping the Keyshawn Davis, Edwin De Los Santos breakdown very, very soon, probably today. So hopefully, like, look out for that. But I wanted to just give you my first thoughts on the fight. Let me know what you guys think and how you feel about this fight in the comments. All right, who do you guys got winning the fight? And, you know, like you always do, challenge my opinions and views on this. I'll see you guys soon. Please subscribe to the channel, smash the like button. Peace.